We're hitting the top of the hour here. I just want to say welcome everyone. Again, please, as you come in, we would love to have you say hello in the chat. That tells us that you can hear us, and it gives you an opportunity to see who else is here in the webinar today. This is how to overcome fear and motivate your board members to fundraise. I know that's a very popular topic. It's something that I get asked all the time about from nonprofits that I talk to. We are recording this today, so if you have to step away for a moment, no big deal. We will follow up with you in the next few days with that recording and some other kind of follow-up information on the webinar. So we're doing that for you. So again, if you have to step away, that's no big deal. As we go along, we certainly welcome any questions. You can post them in the Q&A, and you can post them in the chat. We hope to leave a little time at the end for answering those. We also got some questions during registration. I really appreciate you doing that, and we'll look to see if we can answer those as well. I have a feeling Claire is going to answer most of those as we go through this. Okay, I want to start just with some introductions, and I'm going to start by introducing myself. My daughter's just come in the room. She's my tech support. What's up?
Started like fully.
Yeah.
You still just had the little screen. It's like floating.
Okay. Can everybody hear and see me? Just getting a report from upstairs that some people might still be coming in. If you can see and hear, just say yes in the chat, please. There we go. Okay. There we go. Yeah, we look okay. All right. Thank you. She's so nice. Okay. As we go along, post your questions in the Q&A in the chat. We hope to leave some time for that. And we're going to start with introductions. So I'm going to start with myself, of course. I am Ronald Pruitt. I am the president and founder of For a Good Cause. I've been helping nonprofits. Raise money online for hundreds of millions of dollars for over 2 decades now. They do that through my platform, For a Good Cause, which is a effective and affordable fundraising platform for small nonprofits. You can do anything from accept donations, accept event registration, do crowdfunding, peer-to-peer campaigns, all through For a Good Cause. It's one of the most easiest to use platforms, one of the most affordable platforms. Our clients have donation sizes double national benchmarks, and you typically can pay back your investment in our software with a single donation every month. You can learn more at foragoodcause.com. I encourage you to check out our blog there, check out our past webinars. We have many like the ones that we're doing today, where we bring in a wonderful guest expert. So I encourage you to check that out if you're looking for more education. I'm going to stop sharing there. Now let's get on to the business of the webinar and on to our guest expert, Claire Axelrad from Clairification. So happy that you are here with us today. Claire is one of the smartest, brightest, and kindest fundraisers that I've ever come across. And I know you're going to learn quite a bit from her. There's nobody that knows more on this particular topic. So Claire, take it away from here. And just let me know when you need me to drop a poll or you're ready for questions, and I'll jump back in. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ron. I'm going to, I don't know, I couldn't quite get rid of, there we go. Okay, so welcome. Thank you. I really want you to take a second and just pat yourself on the back and really do it. And I'm asking you to do that because you're here today. And that means that you really care about the work you're doing, you're dedicated to doing it, you want to learn more, and you deserve a big pat on the back for that. And I want to begin with something that my mother told me. She said, Claire, there's two most important days in your life. The first is the day you're born, and the second is the day that you figure out why. And I'm guessing many of you here today may have already figured that out. And I hope that by the end of our session, more of you may begin considering, maybe I was born to facilitate philanthropy, to help others find more meaning in their life, and to help them help us solve the world's most pressing problems. And so before we dig into the thick of things today, I want to share a little bit about my story. And before I started my coaching and consulting business as Clairification 10 years ago, I worked as a director of development and marketing for 30 years at 5 different nonprofits. And I had the opportunity to work closely with lots of board members and also lots of non-development staff. And all of the ideas you'll hear from me today about overcoming fear of fundraising and fundraising resistance are ideas that I've collected from far and wide, from facilitators and trainers that I hired, from wonderful mentors, from workshops like today's, and from boards that I've been privileged to be a member of. So I've tested these over 4 decades. It's not just book learning. And whether you're joining us as a board member, an ED, a development staffer, another type of volunteer, or whatever, I'm hoping you're going to find something here today to help overcome fundraising anxiety. And I want you to know that I had it when I started out, but I really don't have it now. And you can join me. So I just want to say, if I do poke a little fun at board members or staff members at all today, I definitely don't mean you. So let's begin with a common refrain. Who's heard this from a board member or another staff member? I'll do anything but fundraising. Sadly, it happens more often than not. So I want to focus on boards right now, and I want to launch our first poll. And if you could do that, Ron, that would be great. And I want you to answer which of these is most true for your organization. Do all of your board members ask for money? Do most of your board members ask for money? Do few of your board members ask? Or do none of them ask?
Claire, I've launched that poll, and everybody, you should see that pop up on your screen there. We'll give about a minute to get some answers, and then I'll share the results with everyone.
Okay, are the answers coming in? Because I can't see that.
Not yet.
Because I just tried clicking on the poll and it didn't work.
It did launch it. Let's see. Didn't work. Let me try
Can
again.
people tell us in chat if it's working?
Yeah, they say they can't see that. Let me try again here.
It's okay. We can do it without the poll. Shall I just continue on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. So I will tell you what most people, when I meet with nonprofits, generally, very few, all of the board members ask for money, and a decent amount of most, a lot of few, and sadly, there are some nones. And I always pray for the people in the few and none categories. But guess what? It's very easy for us to blame board members. But it's really your job to help your board members with fundraising, not the other way around. So that is why today we are going to talk about, let's see if I can get this, yeah. We are going to talk about how to identify and overcome the most common fundraising barriers. And we'll cover how to understand and create more of a culture of philanthropy in your organization. We're going to see what the most common things are. Oh, here comes the poll. I got a lot of few and some nones. Okay. And we're going to learn some subtle cultural barriers to fundraising. And then we're going to compile some actionable steps for you that will help your existing boards evolve. And then at the end, we'll do some Q&A. And you're also going to apply everything you learn, everything I say about helping board members overcome fears, you can apply to working with your other staff to ratchet up their comfort level, being a part of your development team. And so that brings us to the logical place to start, which is culture of philanthropy. So, who benefits from successful philanthropy? One of the ways to get everybody in your organization comfortable around the notion is to understand that fundraising really should be a mission-aligned role for everyone. Because when you think about it, everyone benefits from increased philanthropy. The staff members who are saying, well, I don't have time for that, I just need to do my work, start to come to understand that they can do more of their work or do it more deeply if you raise more money. And so it's not just about the development staff. And increasingly, successful nonprofits are adopting cultures of philanthropy where everyone involved, the admin staff, the program staff, board members, committee members, direct service volunteers, even beneficiaries, come together as ambassadors, advocates, and askers on behalf of furthering the organization's mission, enacting its values, and fulfilling its vision. But the culture nut can be a hard one to crack, particularly when leadership isn't on board or just doesn't want to do fundraising for reasons that we're going to cover today, even though they know that they should. And this is a little survey that revealed what executive directors and board chairs admitted were the biggest challenges that they saw across their organization. And you see that fundraising is at the top. And also some fundraising related activities are high on the list. Ambassadorship, recruiting the right leaders, getting people engaged, recruiting board who are told at the outset that fundraising will be part of their role. Now, facilitating philanthropy is not rocket science, but board members and staff who are not used to what the process is more broadly, the cultivation, the relationship building that is required to get a successful yes to your solicitation and land a gift, they don't understand all of that, and they are fearful partly because they don't know how to do it. And they need your help in this. And it really is your job to work with your insiders, your staff, and your volunteers to help them feel passionate about your cause and confident in the fundraising process of simply enacting and sharing their passions. So let's try another poll. And I would like to say that of all the barriers to overcome, the biggest one is fear, but this fear takes many forms. So I would like you to tell me what you believe to be your board's greatest fear. Do they feel like they're begging? Do they fear they just might be rejected? Do they think fundraising is aggressive and nasty? don't want to be involved in it? Do they think somebody might ask them to make a gift, a quid pro quo? Or do they fear that they just aren't the right person because they're not at the level and they don't know any rich people?
Claire, we've got that poll, second poll working well the first time around. We've got about half the people answered so far. Keep those answers coming in. It looks like we're kind of even across the board here. I'm going to share this back in just a moment. We'll give another 10 seconds or so for everyone to get those answers in. Thanks so much for participating and giving us this great feedback. All right, here we go. I'm going to end that and share the results back. Looks
Okay.
like yeah, pretty
So
even
it's
across the board
interesting.
there.
It's interesting because, you know, I chose these fears for a reason. They are the most common. And so we're seeing that, yeah, you're all experiencing the exact same thing. So let's go to the next slide. And I've got the most common fears up here. I'm not going to read them to you because we're going to go over them one to one. But I am going to tell you, I don't buy any of them. And you shouldn't either. Rather, you should help others in your organization face these fears head on. So let's start with begging. So someone says, well, I just grew up believing it's impolite to ask for money. You know, money is a huge taboo in our society. It's probably the #1 taboo. And people talk about anything else. So I have a whole workshop on talking about money, but what I'm going to say today is that I suggest that you retire the tin cup. And one of my mentors was Hank Rosso, who founded the fundraising school that's now part of the Lilly School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. He defined fundraising as the cup you're asking people to fill is their own until their cup runneth over with joy. So you're not handing out a cup for yourself, but to fill up the donor's cup with joy, and also a cup you're asking on behalf of the people who need help and who deserve that help. And I want to tell you a story. I worked for many years at a comprehensive human services organization, and we used to take donors on little tours in minivans. We had a children's program, an emigre program, an adult day health center, and we would take them to these different sites. And one day we did this, and we took people to our adult day health center, and they saw all the people there who were like enjoying meals together. Some of them were in a band together. Some of them were singing songs together. They were exercising together, and they all looked really happy and healthy. And we came back to our central site, and we happened to be having a phone-a-thon with board members participating that evening. We were calling lapsed donors. And one of my board members came up to me afterwards, and she said, Claire, that was the easiest that fundraising ever felt to me. And I said, oh, well, that's great. Why do you think that was? And she said, because I had just been to that adult day health center. I had seen all those people, and I felt like I was just asking for them. And that felt really good for me. So I looked up the definition of begging recently, and one of the definitions is that it's something for nothing. And the definition of asking for philanthropy is something for something. It's value for value. When you solicit a charitable gift, you exchange one thing of value, usually money or time, for something else of value, which is usually an intangible feel good. So it's not a one-way street. And that's a very important concept for board members to internalize, that every donor nonprofit relationship is based on this mutual value for value exchange. And when the donor makes the gift, they become a partner in a cause that feels bigger than their self. And it's a way for them to be the change that they want to see in the world. And the asker facilitates this amazing accomplishment. So you don't just take, you give as much as get. And you have to be thinking like, well, the person I'm talking to, this donor has dreams, and I can help them accomplish those dreams. And lots of times I would talk to people who say, well, Claire, you know, when I give the homeless person some change on the way to work, I feel sort of good about that, but sort of not, because I'm not really sure that that's really helping them. And I'm not sure what they're going to do with it. And so then I could explain, well, let me tell you how we work with homeless people, and the whole range of services that are brought to bear to try to, you know, have a longer term outcome that's a positive one. And then they would be like, oh, that's a much better way for me to address this problem. And they felt good about asking their friends to do that as well. So board members who may be embarrassed about fundraising because they think that it's begging or taking, they can get excited about the idea of facilitating philanthropy and helping donors to fulfill their dreams and feel like good people and do things they already want to do, but in a way that feels more productive or likely to get to the outcome, the victory that they would like to experience. And it brings some meaning to their lives to do this. So let's look at the next fear, which is rejection. So, you know, they say, what if I ask a friend to support the nonprofit and they say no? Well, I always ask people, all right, what would you do if you went to a new restaurant that you really loved? Or what would you do if you went and saw a movie and you really thought it was terrific? And of course they say, well, I would tell my friends. And so I would say, okay, do you love our organization? And they'd be, yeah, of course. And I'd see, well, why are you being so selfish? Why are you being so stingy? Why aren't you sharing the love that you have for our organization? So if you can reframe asking as sharing the love, helping others find out about something and feel as good as you do about it, that can be really, really helpful. And then understand that, let's say you were sharing this great Thai restaurant you went to, and your friend said, oh, thanks for letting me know, but you know, Thai isn't really my thing. Or, you know, I saw this great action movie, and you're like, ah, great, I'm glad you enjoyed it, but action movies aren't my thing. Well, that's okay. It's okay if they don't want to join with you, but you don't want to rob them of the opportunity, because they might love it just like you do. So speaking of love, while people fear being rejected as fundraisers, AKA money grubbers, few people fear being rejected if they're spreading love. So that's why I like to reframe fundraising this way. And I like to take it to the point where I reframe it as philanthropy facilitation. And philanthropy literally translates from the Greek as philos, love, of anthropy, humanity. And when we use the word fundraising, we have that fund, money word right in there. And so, you know, we have all these words for money: filthy lucre, Freud called it merde. Nonprofits don't even think they're supposed to make money. So definitely they don't want to be asking for it. But philanthropy is about love of humanity, and nobody is against love of humanity. And so sometimes I think we really miss the forest for the trees when we think of fundraising as just being about money. Another way to get people in the right frame for making a philanthropic ask is storytelling. And, you know, we all love stories. And I like to ask board members to tell a story. First, I ask them to tell me their story, why they're passionate, what brought them to the organization. Because their own testimonial is the most powerful role that they can play. And the other thing is organization stories. You know, what stories have resonated with them during their tenure on the board? Lots of times I would share stories with board members in newsletters and things like that. And I would hear back like, oh, I always remember that story about blah, 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 blah. They never remember anything else from the newsletter but the stories, certainly not the letters from the executive director, et cetera. And you can also send board members out into the field so they can see and then tell stories. And we know from a lot of research that people are wired to want to enter into and listen to stories. And if board members feel like they have to master a bunch of data about your nonprofit, like from fact sheets that you give them, they're going to fear that they're going to be challenged and they're going to look dumb. And the truth is, giving people a bunch of data isn't that helpful, because when anybody is confronted with a lot of data, research shows that they kind of put up their dukes. They want to fight it. They want to refute it. They want to prove that it's not true. And that can be really uncomfortable for board members who are in the solicitation role. But that doesn't happen with stories. We all love them. And the goal is for the donor to sort of resonate with the story so much that they want to jump in and become a part of it. In fact, they want to seize the opportunity to be the loving hero who gives the story a happy ending. So all of this is to say, again, that fundraising is not the goal in itself. It always serves a noble end. And if the donor prospect doesn't want to serve that end, so be it. That's not your problem. But at least you shared the story of your passion and tried to get them to join you. So the next sphere goes back to our negative stereotype of the F word. And, you know, that's the person who says, well, you have to be really aggressive to get donations, and I don't want to be like that. To which I say, good fundraising is inviting, not fighting. So you want to stop with the phrases like, I'm going to go hit him up for a gift. I'm going to go twist her arm. The goal is not to make people give till it hurts. It's rather to invite them to give till it feels good. So your job again is to make philanthropy all about love, not war, pleasure, not pain. And if you make it about bullying, you're going to get very few willing fundraisers and very reluctant donors. So make sure to quash those aggressive phrases whenever you hear them. We're very used to using them. And so be on the alert, because you don't do fundraising to people. You share with them. You meet with them. And meetings and visits are fun, and sharing is generous, and doing things with, that's a positive relational experience, especially when that with has to do with shared passions. And passion is a key fundraising secret for overcoming fear. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But first, I want to get to this one, because this is a big one, the quid pro quo. If I ask them to donate, they're going to ask me too. All right, think of it this way. It's quite possible that you and your friend both love music. So when you ask your friend to make a gift to the symphony on whose board you sit, this makes sense. And when she later asks you to make a gift to the environmental organization on whose board she sits, it's perfectly okay for you to decline if the environment is not an issue that really floats your boat. And you explain this to your friend exactly this way. Sarah, I'm so appreciative of the gift you made to the symphony. I know how much we both love classical music. I'd love to support a cause of yours too, but this one just isn't my thing. I've decided to make impact gifts to 5 philanthropies annually, which means I stick with the causes closest to my heart. And this just isn't one of them. I respect the work that you're doing for them. I hope you understand. Here's a way that you can approach an ask to a friend. You can say, you may know that I'm involved with whatever, the Humane Society. They're doing wonderful things, and I wonder if their mission might speak to you as well. I totally understand if it's not your thing, but can I tell you a little bit about it? And if they say no, no worries. You can then just say, if at some future point you're involved with something and want to share with me, I'd be happy to hear about it. And I hope you'll be open to letting me do the same. So the next fear is also a big one, that people feel like, look, I don't know any rich people. I can't ask for a big gift. And to that I say, well, you know what? You have contacts. Everyone has contacts, friends, family, work colleagues, book club members, church members, parents at school. And the fact that they have a connection to you is more important than how wealthy they are. And what's really important is your passion. And if you're making a stretch gift, then maybe they would like to join you and make a stretch gift as well. I know one staff member that I worked with who made $1,000 gift to his organization. And that was huge, huge for him. But it was really helpful because then he felt okay going and asking a multimillionaire for a gift. And he explained to the person that, you know, he had just made that gift. And he said, this is the largest gift I've ever made. And I am hoping that you will consider also making the largest gift that you've ever made to our organization. And this person, you know, said, well, I guess if that's $1,000 is what you're giving, then I should probably be giving probably $200,000 or maybe more. And they ended up making a $200,000 gift. So don't simply assume that people can't give and they won't be generous, because we know what they say about the word assume. What I really want you and encourage you is to never say no on behalf of other people. Don't fear asking people because you think whatever you think. And one of the things that I hear a lot is, this isn't a good time to ask because I think they're going through a divorce, or I think that they're sick, or I think they just lost their job. And what I've found is that this may be precisely the time when people would actually like people to reach out to them. So you don't want to ignore people. You don't want to deny them the opportunity to feel the joy of giving just because you're making some assumptions. Reaching out and coming from a place of love is always a good thing. And for board members who say, well, I just can't think of anybody, and if you don't have somebody to assign them to, you can say, well, okay, if you can't think of anyone to refer right now, let's look at some other ways you might be able to help with donor development. Would you be willing to make thank you calls, or write thank you notes, or add personal notes on appeals, or maybe take donors on tours, or host an event, or speak on our behalf at a community group? How might you be comfortable sharing our passion, your passion about our mission with others? And this brings me to something that one of my other mentors, Kay Sprinkle Grace, taught me, which she calls the AAA model of fundraising. And you may be familiar with it, which is you really want to teach your board members to spell fundraising with 3 A's. And each of these is a hat that they can put on. And under each hat, ambassador, advocate, asker, are an array of activities that they can choose to help you with. And my goal is to get board members comfortable ultimately with all 3 of these. But I begin by saying, you can wear all of them or one or two of them. You can't wear none of them. Hats keep our heads protected. Your job as a board member is to keep our organization protected, to keep us covered. And that means financially too. And so you work up to getting them comfortable with each hat. And when you go slowly, it's less threatening. So ask yourself right now, are my board members comfortable or confident in their role as ambassadors, making thank you calls, writing notes, identifying prospects, taking people on tours, taking them to coffee, cultivating them at an event? If they're not comfortable, ask yourself, what do you need to do to get them there? And it might be something like role modeling the task for them, or giving them a sample script for writing a note or making a call, taking them with you on a tour so they can see how it's done. Ambassadors is the one role that all board members should be involved in. Then ask yourself the same question about how comfortable and confident your board members feel as advocates and askers. And again, if you feel like they're not comfortable, what would it take to get them to that point? And it might be something like taking them on a visit with you. Maybe you're visiting a foundation and they can come and they can see how you talk to the foundation and how you present to the foundation, or the Chamber of Commerce, or the Rotary Club, or whatever. And so then they might feel comfortable doing that the next time. Or you can pair them with another board member who does this, or who goes on a solicitation. They can be in a role where they don't have to ask, but simply tell their story and provide testimonial. Then if you still have folks who won't wear any of these hats, it's time to address some of the cultural barriers to fundraising and look at some other remedies. So I said at the beginning that it's important for folks to understand that fundraising is a mission-aligned duty for everyone. It's especially important for board members to embrace this role. And we're going to go over each of these barriers, so I'm not going to read them here. I'm just going to go right to this one, which is they misunderstand the dual governing and financing roles and responsibility of a board member. And board members really wear two gloves. Wearing the board as a body glove, their responsibility is to work together to make governance decisions, to set policy, to hire and fire the ED, to approve strategic plans and budgets. And I call that the talk. And wearing the member glove as an individual, their responsibility is to act in a manner to assure that the board decisions are carried out through adequate financing. This is how the budget gets balanced. So this I call the walk. So they have to each walk on their own 2 feet. And we've been hearing a lot about the need to walk and chew gum simultaneously in Congress. It holds true in spades for board members. If they don't walk the talk, if they don't finance their plans and budget, they're merely creating unfunded mandates. They may as well go work for Congress. So the next cultural barrier is fundraising just it's not a priority for already stretched thin boards. And often board members don't think it's a priority because they don't know it's expected of them. No one told them, or even worse, they were told they wouldn't have to fundraise. And now they're suddenly being told they're supposed to do this. So they end up feeling bad either way. If they do know it's a priority, but they don't know what to do, they feel bad about this. If they were told they didn't have to do it and now they have to, they feel bad about this. It's not their fault. it's the fault of staff. So I want to talk about what you can do about this. And one of them is when you bring board members in, you offer a recruitment orientation so that they can embrace their fundraising role from the beginning. You talk about how you're funded and what the different roles can be, the AAA roles that they can have. And you put fundraising front and center on every single agenda. It's not something that you just don't talk about because the development staffer does it or the development committee does it. You bring speakers in, maybe. I once brought a speaker, I'm in San Francisco, I brought a development person from Stanford in to talk to my board because there were certain things that they weren't comfortable doing. And so the Stanford person coming in and telling them how to do it and that everybody did this and this was accepted practice, all of a sudden they wanted to do it because they wanted to be like Stanford. So, you can get very creative with the kinds of continuing board development that you offer. And then really important, sit down with every board member and make specific assignments with which they're comfortable. You can ask them to fill out a form like the AAA one at the beginning of the year, but when they give it to you, make sure you then set up a time to meet with them and go over it so that their feet are somewhat held to the fire and they feel like they know what they're supposed to do. I have to tell you that every time I consult with an organization, every single time, the staff tell me their board doesn't do enough, and the board members tell me their staff doesn't ask them to do enough. So there's this huge disconnect. Let's look at another cultural barrier, which boards often default to what I call the let's put on a show mode. And it's kind of an auto response that board members gravitate to event fundraising because they think this is going to be better. This will be easier. I'll come to the gala. I'll bring someone to the gala or the golf outing or whatever. And it kind of gets them off the hook from doing face-to-face meetings, doing anything in person. That seems easier. And it ends up being a whole lot of work for staff. And part of the role of leadership is to help board members at least understand that for all the benefits of events, they are the least cost-effective form of fundraising. The good ones raise 50 cents on the dollar, whereas major gift fundraising can raise 90 to 95 cents. So they need to understand that when people buy a ticket, that doesn't translate to a major gift. It sometimes barely even covers the cost associated with running the event. So you're really kind of kidding yourselves if you think this is the best way to raise money. And remind the board members that people give donations to other people, not to organizations. And even the most inspiring event can't match the emotional connection of a face-to-face appeal. And on to the last, but certainly not least, cultural kiss of death is, what do you do if board members refuse to accept their fundraising role? And I'm often asked, what do you do if the board member says, I'll do anything but fundraising? Is that okay? No, it's not okay. So is it okay to ask them to step down? And to that I say, absolutely. Board slots are valuable. You can't afford to fill them with folks who just sit on the sofa. And cranky, passive board members drag others down. One rotten apple can spoil the whole barrel, and that's an issue of group dynamics. And what you need in the group are people who are radiators, not drains. And board members who fear fundraising, they spread that fear. And you get into this mindset where people are whining all the time about how hard it is to do fundraising. And we collude with them and we say, yeah, I know nobody likes to do that, but we'll have a training for you. Fundraising is so important that if you have this negative mindset, it becomes so contagious that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then without fundraising, you're not able to grow. And in today's competitive environment, if you don't grow, you die or you cease to be relevant. So you want to ask people who won't take this on to do something else if being on the board is not a good fit for them at this time, and suggest it may be more comfortable for them and useful to you too, for them to right now be on a committee or an advisory group, or to serve as a volunteer, or simply to continue being a donor. That's a very valuable role. Short of firing board members, the best thing that you can do, again, is to begin reframing how you talk about fundraising in your culture. Move towards what is my clarification tagline: philanthropy, not fundraising. The love of humankind, not love of money. The passionate P versus the fearful F. And again, I had mentioned, sometimes we say, oh, we'll train you on fundraising. Well, people don't like to be trained, and certainly they don't want to be trained on something that they hate. So I like to do inspiring philanthropy sessions where I talk about all the things that donors love. And you may be familiar with the MRI studies that show that when we even contemplate giving, we get a shot of dopamine that gives us this warm glow feeling. So you want to remind board members that rather than making folks feel bad, they're inviting them to feel good. Another thing that my mentor, Hank Grosso, said is fundraising is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving. So you really want to talk about the why of doing fundraising, not just the what. I think that being a philanthropy facilitator, somebody who helps others experience the joy that can come from philanthropic involvement, I think that person is almost more important than the philanthropists. Donors are heroes, but philanthropy facilitators are superheroes. And it all starts with connecting with passionately held belief. I told you this is my super secret to overcoming fear. Simply ask your folks to get in touch with their own passion for your cause. I like to do this as an exercise at the beginning of a board meeting where people get paired up and they tell their story to their colleague, why they got involved, why they stay involved, and then the other person tells them. And in the telling of the story, you begin to feel more passion. And then when you hear the other person's story, you begin to feel more passion. And you can do this 2 or 3 times in the course of a meeting so that you tell your story more often and you hear more stories. Once you're reconnected to that passion, you simply enact it. You give at a passionate level, a stretch gift. And then the final passion step is asking others to join you in your passion. And if this doesn't work, and some board members have bad habits that are really hard to break, I wonder what happened to the rest of that slide. Well, there's some words there. And one of the things that you can do to break bad habits is term limits. You need real term limits. And that helps avoid the status quo stagnation. And you can escape from that cycle of that's not how we do things, especially with a board who's been used to thinking of themselves as a non-fundraising board. The other thing that's good about term limits is you really need opportunities to move new folks onto the board as a reward for being dedicated donors or volunteers. And if you limit the way new folks can get involved, you really limit your ability to raise more money going forward, broaden up your sphere of influence, and bring more people into your organization. Then there's the group dynamics issue, which you really want to break up because a cup half empty board becomes a fulfilling prophecy. It becomes a cup half empty nonprofit. And the emphasis starts to shift away from attracting community support to maybe earning income, almost to the point where 501c3 status could be at risk. It's not a likely outcome, but it's still good to keep the fact that you exist for public benefit front and center. And when you don't do that, the biggest problem I see is all the potential philanthropy that gets left on the table. And it just means that the organization accomplishes less than they could. And that always makes me sad. So let's conclude by going back to reframing fundraising in the way that automatically removes barriers. Oh, look at that. There they are. So you really want to reframe what fundraising is. You want to get your board to joyfully fundraise by showing them you're coming from a place of love, not money. You're sharing your passions, not your pain. You're giving people opportunity to be a hero and feel awesome. And you're telling stories that people are drawn into, that they want to give a happy ending to. So when you're helping people like this, when you're helping people, when your mission is accomplishing a lot, when people are relying on your work and you're successful, this is when you really have the privilege and the responsibility to fundraise, because otherwise people are left in the lurch. And it's very different than somebody saying, hi, I'm on the board here and I've been assigned this year to hit you up. Will you shake some change loose? Okay. I think it's time for a few questions and a little wrap up.
Claire, I'm absolutely loving this. I'm absolutely loving this. Something that comes to my mind, I was thinking about, my kids grew up watching the Pixar films, and I was thinking about Ratatouille and how the concept was anyone can be a cook, anyone can be a chef. And listening to you about this, I'm thinking anyone can be a fundraiser. No matter the board, no matter who you are on that board, anyone can be a fundraiser. So I'm absolutely loving this. I want to jump into some questions. We got some of these submitted during the registration. So and if anybody has any last minute things, they can put it in the chat or the Q&A there. Diane wants to know, should you set a board goal for fundraising? Should there be a number on this? Does that work itself into these assignments that you're handing out?
You know, I would say that I wouldn't say a definitive yes or a definitive no. It really depends on your organization and your board members and your culture. It's sometimes very useful to have a goal that is a give or get goal, that if they can't give that amount themselves, that they try to help you get that amount. I prefer suggesting that while they serve on the board, that they make your philanthropy one of their top 1, 2, or 3 philanthropies, and that they do make a passionate stretch gift for them. And, you know, you can do some work around talking about what is a stretch gift. Because a lot of times in a culture, I mean, I worked with one justice organization that all the board members were attorneys, and they were all giving $250. $500 was a major gift. And so we had to do some talking, and we talked a lot about why fundraising was important and what it could help people accomplish. And they ended up deciding that they really wanted to grow. They really wanted to do a lot more stuff, and that meant they were going to have to step up more. And then we, as staff, decided how much we were going to ask each board member to give. And we asked them for much more significant gifts than they had been giving. And once we got the board president on board, he suddenly felt completely passionate and comfortable. He got religion. And you kind of have to get religion to preach religion, I find.
Yes, absolutely. Robin wants to know, you know, it looks like maybe she has recruited a board without asking them that, hey, you're going to have to fundraise, and now she's going to have to pivot. She's going to go back to them. How to start that conversation?
I think that one of the things that you can do is bring in somebody. You know, sometimes it's uncomfortable to do it on your own, but if you bring in somebody, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a fundraising facilitator, it can be an ED at another organization that your people admire, like what I did with Stanford, where you really talk about why the board all has to be involved in fundraising. And I think it's fine to say, you know, when we did this, we really made a mistake. You know, we didn't really understand how important this is, but now we're seeing that as we're having, you know, so many challenges and the need to fundraise is so clear, we really, really need to rely on our leadership, because the community looks to the leaders. And, you know, I know one organization where they went and they asked a community leader to make $100,000 gift. And this community leader was 100% capable of doing this and made these types of gifts elsewhere and had been giving to this organization. And he said, well, what do your board members do? And, you know, they had to say, well, the most any board member gives is 10,000. And he knew who some of those board members were. And he was like, well, okay, then that's what I'm going to give too. So, yeah.
Yeah. I got a question from Suzanne that kind of also kind of blends into my side of things. How to encourage board members to use peer-to-peer fundraising. We've actually seen some of our clients set up specific peer-to-peer online campaigns for the board members, where they will build fundraising pages with the board's picture, you know, board members' picture and a story and a script all for them, and they just hand them a URL. How do you see technology kind of coming into play here, or how can that help a board member go out and fundraise for you?
Oh, hugely, hugely. I think anything that you can do to make this process easy for your board members, you should do. And I think where I was suggesting to you, do my board members feel comfortable in this role as ambassador, as advocate, you know, as asker? And then think about, well, what would make them more comfortable? Things like that, where you could have a script, where you can have a fundraising page. I mean, there are do-it-yourself fundraising pages, you know, peer-to-peer, that you don't even have to, as a staff member, work at very hard once you've set them up. If you're familiar with Charity Water, if you go to their website, you're going to see they have birthday campaigns, and it is completely turnkey. Like, I can go right to Charity Water's website. I can decide I want to set up a birthday campaign, and all of a sudden I'm off to the races, and I send all my friends who I'm going to, you know, invite to my party, and say, don't give money to me, give money to this campaign. And people can just start doing that without you even having to work at it. It's kind of evergreen that way. But I would say anything that, you know, writing an email for them, writing a text for them, you know, yeah, make it really easy. I think that's one of the hugest reasons that this doesn't work, that it gets talked about at a board meeting, that people are told, we want you all to help, we want you all to step up, and then the ball just gets dropped. You know, maybe they go as far as getting a list of people they're supposed to contact, but they never contact them because they're not sure what to say.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, we've seen those evergreen type campaigns. We've also seen very specific board-led campaigns that are peer-to-peer. So I think there's a huge opportunity for the merging of technology and board fundraising. It's got a few minutes here. I just want to try to get in a couple more questions, and then Claire, I'm going to ask you to kind of wrap things up and maybe assign some homework or next steps for them. I have a question from Betty and Heather about you know, they maybe have an older board, you know, which I kind of maybe uncomfortable asking them to do this type of thing, maybe because of age. I'm not sure, but I assume it kind of leads itself right back into the same types of fears that that you want them to overcome and how you talked about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those things that we talked about to help people feel differently about their role, and not that when they have to do this that it's a bad thing, but that they're saying, I just took up painting and I just love it. And, I took up being on the board of this theater group and I really, really love it. And I think that you would really love it too. It's just a different frame of mind. But I also think a lot of the problem, again, is that we as staff do not hold our board members' hands. Knowing how to fundraise it's just not something that you're born with. I mean, some people are, but very, very few people. So being taken by the hand and shown how you can do it and making it really simple for them is really, really important. And, I don't think people stop sharing their favorite restaurants because they get older. That's for sure. I think more it's like the board is old. It's set in its ways. It's been doing the same thing for a long time. Boards without term limits have board members who've been on there 12, 15 years. They've already asked all of their friends. They just don't have any more energy left in them. And that's why you need term limits. You can have ad hoc committees. You can have a committee of former board who are champions, and you talk with them twice a year about things that they can help you with, but get them off the board, because when they're tired, your whole organization gets tired.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely agree. And there's a question from Deborah. I think that kind of just pivots off this a little bit. She was talking about breaking through on a cold call, or a board member breaking through on that cold call with someone they don't know. Again, I think that's asking them to reach out to their constituencies first, and then holding their hand for when they want to talk to people that don't, with scripts and all of that. Am I correct?
Yeah. And if you don't know someone, my favorite thing is to bring two people to an in-person solicitation, and you can do that via Zoom. That's one of the things we learned over the past 21 months. It works totally. So don't use it as an excuse that you can't get a meeting in person. And the board member plays the role of testimonial. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just telling my story. I'm so passionate, and it's kind of social proof because you're not getting paid for this. And, it's the Yelp effect. And people are like, oh, well, somebody else thinks they're really good. And, it doesn't matter if this is somebody that you've known for a long time.
Right. Absolutely. And last question, just to follow up, you mentioned a kind of a term limit for a board. Do you have any recommendations on that?
I think a pretty standard term limit is 3 years, which can be renewed one time. So 6 years, sometimes extended for another year if you're a board officer, when it would be time for you to go off. Great.
Perfect. Claire, this has been absolutely amazing. What would be this next step that you want people listening to this, these boards of these nonprofits? What do you want them to do next? Because it's one thing to, have the board shake their heads yes to all this, but it's another thing to actually get them to do something. So what would be that homework that you would have for this, and any other wrap up that you want to share?
Sure. So one thing I would like you all to do is join Clairification School, because I've got all sorts of content on my website that will help you with this and other things. And truly, my motto is, if I know it, I want you to know it too. So this is very inexpensive. It's as inexpensive as I possibly could make it, so that I can kind of be by your side all year long. And of course, if you want personal coaching, I do that too. So I hope you'll go to my website and sign up. And I'm also going to follow up with you after this webinar. I've got a special offer for you, and a handout that's pretty robust about leadership's role in fundraising. In terms of what you can do, homework, the simplest thing you can do is find an opportunity at a board meeting or one-to-one and ask your board member if they love your nonprofit. And if they do, ask them why they're being so stingy with it. And then ask them to tell you a story about why they love your nonprofit. And after they tell that story, say, hey, that's primarily what I'm asking you to do here, is just share this story with other people. So you want to partner with them. You can't expect them to do it on their own. So you have to call them each up and say, hey, have I got a deal for you? Let's figure out this year how you can facilitate love of humanity.
Love it. Claire, you're amazing. You're absolutely amazing. I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with all of our followers here at For Good Cause. I am going to follow up in the next day or so to get everybody the recording. So look for an email from me. Again, Claire will also be following up to give you some of her goodies. And I do recommend you get in that Clairification school. There's a lot of good stuff there. Absolutely amazing. This hour is just a small part of the types of stuff that Claire can get you guys, and the knowledge that she can share with you guys. So thanks, everyone. Send us any feedback that you have. We'd love to know how we did today. I hope to see you next month. We've got another big guest speaker coming on, so I hope that you'll join us again. We do a monthly webinar series, and I hope to see you again. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Claire, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.